Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Bob's Woodshop. Today's table saw cleanup day. I had a bunch of just little marks and pieces of glue and things like that on the table saw. So I do this about every 3 or 4 months to just get the thing cleaned up. So I initially took the stains off with acetone, which is a real good cleaner. I then gave it a light sanding with my Festool sander, and now it's nice and shiny. And now after that, then I use some of the T9 Bow Shield. That puts a really nice surface on it and lets the wood glide right over the table saw, nice and easy. I also cleaned off the gears inside the raises and lowers, the blade, as well as the tilt. There's always a little bit of sawdust that gets compacted in there, so I scraped that out with an awl and then put some Bow Shield on there. So main project today, I'm going to be making a new outfeed table for the table saw. Let me show you what I'm going to get into. Okay, so let's get into the real project today. The table saw tune-up is one thing, but I really want to do is replace this oak outfeed table. I think I built this maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I originally built it with that this could fold. There's hinges underneath here, and if I wanted to fold that down for extra room, I had the ability to do that. However, I never really followed through with that plan. Instead, what I did is I built this cabinet down here which holds saws and sanders and planers and things like that. So I've been thinking about this for a couple weeks, and I was thinking about replacing that entire cabinet, but I don't think I really need to do that. I think I can put an extra shelf in there for a little bit more room, but the main project today is just going to be replacing this this oak countertop. Okay, the first step is I'm just taking these 2 pieces of plywood, and I got to put a bunch of screws in here, so I did this in time-lapse photography. I wish I worked that fast. Okay, so next step, obviously I got to do some trimming. Pieces weren't the exact size, so a little bit of just cutting to width here. So I try to wear my dust mask the majority of the time, but especially when cutting plywood. The formaldehyde in plywood drives me crazy. The effect that it has on my nostrils, it just makes my nose run for a while. And so really work on using the dust mask here. Me, I'm just trimming off the corners. I didn't want to be bumping my hips around this corner as I move around here, so I'm just putting a 45 on there. That's just a little cleanup with the sanding block in preparation for the glue up. So I want to wrap these 2 pieces of plywood with some hardwood, and I grabbed a 2-inch thick piece of cherry, and I got to plane it down to 1 3/16. Like I said before, I love the smell of cherry. Doesn't matter if it's in the morning or anytime during the day. So in preparation for cutting to width, I had to run it a couple times through my jet joiner. Okay, so here just going through the process of cutting some 22-degree angles in order to wrap the cherry around the top. This takes a few minutes. I'd say this overall project between yesterday and today, probably get about 4 or 5 hours into it. Real easy project. Fun to do. So do you ever notice no matter how small the project you're working on, horizontal surfaces get covered very quickly? Always amazes me. Stuff is everywhere. So what I'm doing here is just cutting up some 2x4 pressure treated wood. It's just some extra pieces I had. What I need to do is put these on top of the tool cabinet underneath the saw, and I'm going to rest the new table saw Outfeed table on top of that. So I needed some spacer blocks. No reason to use good wood here. Okay, here I'm cutting the groove for the miter gauge, and the bit that I'm using is 3/4 of an inch wide. The groove that I'm cutting is about 1 1/8 inches, and I don't want to just use one edge of the router on one surface. I want to route both grooves in here just so I'm not changing the setup, and I'm not going off balance either and cut where I don't want to cut. So I'm giving myself a alleyway in order to cut and not make any mistakes. So for the second groove, I'm using these little spacer blocks in order to make that setup a lot faster the second time around. Okay, so we're starting to come down home stretch. Only a couple more process steps to do. And I wanted to give it a nice sanding on the top and the edges. Not really worried about the bottom of it. Oh, look at that by itself. And here I'm just screwing it into the cabinet that's underneath. So I like using 3 drills when I'm doing this type of work. One for the drill bit, one for the countersink, and another for the driver bit. Okay, so there's various finishes that you can use. On this one I chose to use Johnson's Paste Wax, as I do not like the look of boiled linseed oil, which is a traditional finish for workbenches or tops. But I just don't like the color on plywood, so I'm going to just wax this. I think this is going to look good. It's going to protect it, and it's particularly going to protect it from glue-ups, because I do a lot of my glue-ups on this surface. So just to recap, that was my old nasty Outfeed table, and that's my new pretty one. Huge improvement as far as I'm concerned. I really like the looks of it. So one of the important upgrades I did is I ended up not trusting these wheels anymore. And I just put some 2x3s underneath the wheels. And the main reason I did that is for my bench. My bench, when I built that, I built the bench before I bought the table saw. And the bench was lower than the surface of the top of the table saw. So now the table saw is a little bit above it, so I'm never going to have interference with that anymore. The Outfeed table came out really nice. One of the things I did, this space here, this walkway, I moved the whole saw over about 12 inches. So now I've got a nice walkway here. And the Outfeed table here is a little bit narrower. So now I've got a ton of room in here that I didn't have before. So I'm really happy with this. And I still have this to upgrade. I gotta organize that a little bit better, but that's for another day. So here's a quick review. I think the overall project came out very nice. I'm glad I made the improvements and cleanups on the table saw, and I also plugged in this little Raycon dust vac with just a 12 or 13 inch hose there, and you can really feel the vacuum suction if I take off the blade guard on top of the saw. So that was very good also. So here's just a couple stills. Check it out. Like I said, I'm very, very happy with this. It gives me more room around the saw. It looks a lot better. And just happy with the overall project. This is a good 5 or 6 hours worth of work. So hopefully this gives you some ideas. You know the drill. Like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in with me today. Thank you.